Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben. And Carissa's not registering.
I'm your co-host, Carissa.
There we go. Okay, I heard you. Kind of low, but try again one more time.
Testing, your co-host, Carissa.
All right, that'll do. That'll do
nice.
Well enough. Yep. So, okay. Well, we'll make that work. So, everyone, welcome into the program today. So, today on the show, we have computer and technology news, and you know what? It's going to be fun. We're going to be doing a lot of things. And everyone, let's go ahead and just get this out of the way real quick. computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all that and more. You can, of course, find it at computeramerica.com, as well as links to social media. And anything that we talk about today will be included in the show notes. So be sure to check that out and try that there. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news because, I think we should go. Carissa, how was your weekend?
Not too bad. Just kind of hung out at home, trying to get ready for the snow that's currently falling today. So we're all set up with that, and actually watched The Joker for the first time yesterday. So that was a good time.
Really? It's strange choice of the weekend. I mean, over the weekend, of course, I think that a lot of people have been, kind of glued to their TVs and trying to figure out what's happening with, let's face it, the election. It just came to a conclusion. I know this seems like forever ago, but that was only Friday afternoon, Friday night that a lot of the publications started to call that. And so Joe Biden, there you go. So everyone, again, hopefully you're out there, you are relaxing, staying safe, and hopefully it's a good Monday. So let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Okay, and here we go. So jingle is right here. So let's see real quick. And okay, we'll work on that. You know what? We'll work on that later. Don't worry about that. Okay, everyone. So, computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. And sorry, still fiddling with some things here on my end, but it should be okay. And let's see. So, share the screen right here. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted to hear. So perfect. Okay. So with that being said, everyone, let's go ahead and get started with computer technology news. And there's a lot of different stories, and I'm looking forward to a lot of these. Let's talk about. Let's do something kind of lighthearted. Actually lighthearted. Trust me, there are those in there, but let's talk about this one because it is quite related to what I was just talking about. Joe Biden, of course, is the new president-elect, and, that led to a lot of chaos over the weekend in certain spheres, and we can, of course, just say that this story now comes to us from TechCrunch, and you may have seen this before and seen it coming, but check this one out here. This has to do with... Parler. And real quick, Carissa, have you ever heard of Parler?
No.
Okay. Well, Parler. It's, so Parler is a social network, much like Facebook or Twitter. Actually, more like Twitter, I would say. It's an alternative social network that is really catering to, I guess, the Trump crowd. It's people who are very very pro freedom of speech in the form that no one, nowhere ever should censor anything anyone says ever. If you don't like it, look somewhere else. If you are offended by it, go to heck. Freedom means free, and that is the end of it. That is what is attracting Parler, because they can say anything that they like, and again, no censorship that they feel that they get from the likes of Twitter and Facebook and Bezos and just every other tech company. So, anyways. Yeah. So anyways, chafing at new misinformation safeguards and a lost election, dejected Trump supporters flocked to the alternative social network Parler over the weekend. Parler's homepage promised that users can speak freely and express yourself openly without fear of being deplatformed for your views. Parler shot up the charts across, and this is really what made it kind of tech news, was that it topped the all-time I'm sorry, not the all-time. It topped the most downloaded app in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store in the days following the election. An Android app called Parler was also trending Monday, likely due to misspelled for parlor, one with an O, one with an E. So, it happens sometimes. So let's go ahead and just say that... Yeah, it's so weird. Okay, yeah, so let's just go ahead and say that Joe Biden prevailed on Saturday, picking up the critical state of Pennsylvania, obviously. Now there's, of course, the rest of the process that, the rest of the tallies have to come in. There's going to be recounts in many, many states. The official race isn't over, but the Associated Press has, of course, called it for Biden. And, well, after that, Parler sat at about number 7 on Saturday. In the Apple App Store, and they said that according to a mobile app market sensor tower, and by the next day it shot up to number 1, a first for the app. It remains in the top slot now, in contrast to its position a week ago as the 1,000th most downloaded app. So you can see that, you can definitely see cursive where a week ago it was number 1,000, now it's number 1 because of the results of the election.
And I was just thinking from 7 to 1, I was like, even being in the top 7 is a little shocking, but it went from 1,000 to 7 to 1, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's it certainly has made a little bit of a journey. So there you go. Okay, so Parler's ascent is notable but not totally new. Accounts anticipating a ban have been let's see, I just lost my place. There we go. Accounts anticipating a ban have been pointing their followers toward Parler and other far-right havens with every new platform policy change Twitter and Facebook make. Gab, which, if you recall that, which describes itself as the free speech social network, is also vying for Trump loyalists. There are a number of these, and there are a number of our listeners I know that actually frequent these websites, and it's this thing where they aren't really being extremists. They don't feel like they're, kind of catering to some kind of really out there ideology. It's just that certain viewpoints they feel get censored on Twitter, Facebook, and other social media groups, and they join these groups. But this is why we republished a paper done by a particular university, which is currently slipping my mind, but it's up there at Computer America, the article in its entirety, and we talk about the difference between moderation and censorship. What is the difference between someone censoring an idea and moderators deleting content that is inflammatory? What is the line? Where is the line? And how does this benefit its users? Obviously, Gab and Parler are not looking to moderate whatsoever. They're also not looking to censor whatsoever. So these are going to, ideas that are much more inflammatory are going to spread there. And again, well, they use the term safe haven. yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. So they're saying that it's crazy to believe that only a handful of Silicon Valley companies will have complete control over the flow of information, communication, and news forever. That is what the Gab CEO, Andrew Torba, wrote. And he said that Torba was booted from Y Combinator's alumni network for threatening comments and harassment shortly after the 2016 election. So there's always... there always seems to be the element of just, kind of people who take it a little bit too far, and then they start these kind of organizations, again, kind of threatening comments and harassment. You could see how someone who would be accused of that would like to start their own social media network that, hey, they won't be charged with that. So anyways, but in spite of massive calls for a mass exodus, many prominent conservative figures accusing Twitter and Facebook of censorship have maintained their presences on the platform, knowing that their reach will be dramatically limited on the alternative social network. Which, Carissa, it seems like that's, that is the thing with social networks, is that especially if you're someone who is trying to be an influencer, if you are trying to, kind of affect change in some kind of way, push an ideology, if you're trying to reach the masses in any way, you have to be on the social media site that has the most social media users.
Right. And that makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
And you have to have the people to talk to. So if you're just talking to other people who believe the same stuff as you, then how are you going to get that, the transition that you're looking for, or the new followers, or whatever it is you're looking for?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's going to lead to, and this is everything that we were talking about with moderation and censorship. It's this idea that in the article they used a forum as an example for Hasidic Jews, and it was a very different approach, but it made a lot of sense that they were looking at a forum like that where people are looking to talk about living a kosher lifestyle. They're looking how to raise their kids in that kind of community. They're looking for information on, from experiences from others within the community. And every time that they tried to have these conversations in any kind of space that was totally free speech, totally hands off, say whatever you want, it is what it is. Every time they have tried, every time these communities, and this particular community again was Hasidic Jews, every time they had tried to have these conversations, they would be flooded with anti-Semitic racism and just horrible comments and things like that. And the conversation would quickly turn from here's how I raise my kids to here I am defending myself against kind of anti-Zionist whatever people who come in and just completely derail our conversation over and over and over again. But once you allow that moderation, once you allowed people to start getting banned, to delete comments that were inflammatory, looking to incite violence, looking to start harassment and stuff like that, the people were able to speak more freely within the community itself. And I think that is the reason why, sites like these are never going to truly become safe havens, is that if you are part of the majority, if you are part of the collective same thinking group, you're going to be okay. It's, if you are totally libertarian, totally limited government, no oversight, freedom is freedom and all that good stuff, you're going to be welcomed there with open arms, and you're going to have very insightful conversations. But if you in any way are a minority or someone who has a differing viewpoint, you will be flooded with people who disagree and disagree vehemently. And even though to them, they think they're having a civil conversation, but to you, you are suddenly justifying something that you are not, that you never intended to have a conversation about. So that was, I guess, kind of one example of the difference between free speech and moderation, and how moderation can actually assist in free speech.
Absolutely. And it's important that we have those things. But I don't know how I feel about having particular groups having spaces like this to talk about stuff, but like that's going to happen and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And that's fine. And I'm glad they're moving that way. So
Yeah.
I don't have to look at them anymore.
It does come down to, regardless of whatever space you try to occupy, there is always going to be some form of kind of oversight from the government, because you can be, totally free, whatever, but if you start calling for assassination attempts against a public figure, if you start to incite violence in any way, regardless of what you do, law enforcement, whether that's your police, your three-letter agencies, whatever, they don't let that happen for long before people move in and start to, really try to keep a tab on what they see as extremist views. So, people should have whatever space that they want to engage in whatever discourse they can, or, whatever discourse that they like. But if there's any kind of imminent threat of harm or things like that, even a place like Parler, even a place like Gab will still be under the watchful eye of law enforcement. So that's something.
And I mean, you have your freedom of speech, but you're also not exempt from the consequences of your freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want, but there are usually consequences depending on, what you're saying, who you're saying it to, and all that too. So.
Yeah. That freedom of speech, again, you are more than welcome to say, like you said, anything that you want, but it's everyone else's equal right to be as equally appalled at what you said. So, yeah, exactly. So, anyways, continuing on with the article here, and they even give an example here in the article about a gentleman who is saying it's going down. Facebook went after Mark Levin's page yesterday, and tonight they're going after my page. If my page is taken down tonight or in the coming days, find me at Parler. And, again, these are just people who are afraid that they're going to be deplatformed, and they're already looking for ways to, I guess, kind of keep their audience to a certain extent and, kind of go elsewhere. One of our regular guests on the show is actually he's not Ford, but Nathan Evans. There we go. I don't know why it took me seconds to remember his name. Nathan Evans is has visited these sites, and he's very much against censorship in a lot of ways. So I don't think he has one, but these are not mainstream yet. I think that any attempt to paint these as these are mainstream, this is where everyone is going, everyone is leaving Facebook and Twitter, that is pretty delusional. So I can't say that is definitely what is happening. Okay, so with that being said, wrap up the article. Over on Parler, the Trump campaign is raising donations for an election defense task force, but according to the fine print, half of every donation will go towards existing debt. The campaign doesn't appear to have made much original content on the niche social network, instead reposting very similar messages over and over again. So they post to Parler whatever they post to Twitter. So for the many Trump supporters pushing dangerous false claims about the election, blah, 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 don't care about that, as it becomes clear. Let's see. So, yep, there we go. Just want to say that's what happened. That's why that new #1 most downloaded app in the app stores are Parler. And if you haven't heard about them, they are social media sites, again, promising to be completely free spaces to say whatever it is you want, anything that you want. I think even they have their own limits, and they even have their own terms of service and whatever, but they promise not to censor any kind of ideology or, especially right-wing leaning political views. That's kind of their claim to fame. So that's why you see it up there, and that's why you saw it trending so recently.
Well, that's great to know that that's out there. And I'd be really interested to see later on, like, what the new numbers for Facebook look like how many people are actually leaving Facebook and these other platforms to go to these places. I want to see the numbers later on.
And I haven't looked up the Facebook user numbers lately, but let's see, monthly, and I think their numbers have dropped for like the first time in the United States, like a couple of months ago. But overall, social media, and actually found this one right here, this little chart. Very clearly going up. Total Facebook users Q3 2008 to Q2 2019, and as recently as midway last year, I would say even more so during the quarantine and pandemic. But yeah, you're looking at about almost 2.5 billion monthly active users, and I'm sure that has only increased over the course of the quarantine. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So they're definitely close. I think last I heard they're closing in on 3 billion monthly active users, and so regardless of however popular this is going to be, I think sometimes people just forget just how big Facebook is. They're like, oh, Facebook, people need to stop using Facebook. They need to, really reevaluate, and all that may be true, but I don't know, when you have 3 billion users that you can draw information from and draw user data from, they are still the number one source of user information. Maybe second to Google, because Google will of course always have their search engine. But yeah, it's crazy numbers, crazy numbers, and looking like no signs of stopping. So, and sadly, there just aren't that many people who are actively looking for an alternative to Facebook and Twitter and other social media sites. So they have their work cut out for them. So, not that one. Okay, everyone. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue on here. That was story number 1. Story number 2. This will be a fun one. Carissa, what are your feelings on plant-based alternatives to meat?
I think it's great. I actually had something like that recently at Starbucks. Aaron had gotten a standard sausage, egg, and cheese something or other, and I had gotten the plant-based one. And frankly, the plant-based one tasted more like sausage than like the regular one. And I think it's going to be an interesting time to be able to make that kind of stuff in the lab, especially for, how much it plays into the greenhouse gases and global warming and all that other stuff. So I think it's going to be really great, and I have a lot of hope for it.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, I looked at these a while ago, and there's 2 real big competitors, Beyond Meat and Impossible Meat, I think is the other one. And don't get me wrong, there are other companies out there doing the same thing, but I do have to say just real quick that from a diet point of view, if you're looking to buy one of these things and you're like, this is going to make me skinny, no, that will never happen. And it will, keep to your thing, and yeah, eventually you will lose weight. But if you're coming at these meat substitute alternatives, they are not replacements for calorie counting and things like that. Nutritionally, they're about as bad for you as red meat is, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on how you feel about processed foods versus red meat. And these things are definitely hyper processed, so take it as you will. But where it does differ is, like Chris was just saying, with greenhouse gases and the like, whereas one, you have to essentially raise a living creature, an entire cow, and then all of that wasted gut emissions, which is farting, and all of the water that you have to feed these cows, all of the other nutrition that goes into growing a cow, and all of this wasted energy, which really, when you think about it, that is what sunlight and grass and grain and water and all that is what you're doing. You're wasting about 95% of the energy just to create this cow that you're going to harvest the meat from. Whereas Beyond Meat, yeah, and it's looking at it from a very simplistic view, but as opposed to your plant-based options, you are essentially just creating the plants that eventually turn into the burger, and it's a much easier to sustain lifestyle or industry, because you haven't wasted all of that time growing a cow when you can just grow the burger itself. It's much better and much easier on the environment. It is not cheaper, it is not more affordable, and it is not kind of healthier in a lot of ways, but it is much easier on the planet. And like you, Carissa, I think it tastes really good. Taste wise, I think if they haven't nailed it yet, like, you have to go into it thinking
they're close.
This is different, but it's not bad. It's not a bad different. They're close. It's different, but don't expect like, oh, this is a perfect copy of sausage. No, but it's a good version of sausage. You have to go in with that mindset.
Right. And I mean, the texture is really good. And even still, I've seen other companies touting these claims that they've made these plant-based burgers that actually bleed. I don't know how they do that, but like they put something in them, I guess, to make them feel more like burgers somehow. But even still, like that sausage I had, the texture was fantastic. The flavor was fantastic. Like 10 of 10. Would recommend whatever sausage that was. That
would be the hemoglobin of the soy plants and like beet. I think they also use beets at some point, but they're using the hemoglobin, which is a byproduct of like the root system of soybeans, to turn that red and that bleed kind of look to it. But even that is still plant based, so it's
interesting.
Yeah, they're trying to get as close as they can, and it's working. So anyways, we bring all this up. We had a big in-depth conversation about that, and it's all well and good. I bring this up because of this article right here. Check this one out, Carissa. Beyond Meat shares rise, and this is, of course, from TechCrunch, and they're big into the economics of it all. But they have news that McDonald's, Beyond Meat assisted McDonald's with the McPlant, because everything has to be Mick with McDonald's, the McPlant option. Yes, McDonald's just launched a McPlant option, which is much like Starbucks, much like so many other companies out there that have done this before. McDonald's now has a plant-based alternative burger. So,
that's great, but they're probably going to... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead and say it.
I was going to say, I imagine they're going to hit the same kind of roadblocks that, Burger King did with the Impossible Whopper, because like you're still cooking it on the same greasy griddles that you're cooking your burgers on. So how McPlant can it actually be if it's, cooked in that same manner?
They're and much like anyone with like a peanut allergy, I'm sure that a lot of them are saying, "Oh, these are these are healthy and it's great." But they're like, "Was it made in the same universe as peanuts?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course." And they're like, "Oh, well, I can't eat that." Yes, there will be people with kind of that vegetarian mindset that that just any of those diets where you have to dictate the preparation method and kind of what touches it. Yeah, they're always going to have issues with fast food restaurants and how they're made like this. But I got to say, at least having the option on there and being able to substitute any burger with this, it's a starting point. It's a starting point. And
absolutely. And
I honestly think that it's the first step to maybe potentially, and especially if people really take a shine to this, if they actually enjoy the idea that, hey, they can eat a burger that didn't used to, be alive. If they really value that, then that could be a changing of an industry. And you have to admit that as far as McDonald's goes, they have 14. No, I don't know, Carissa. This is your job now. How many locations does McDonald's have? Anyways, they have that many locations across the world. It's a big step when it comes to replacing meat with this, because they're one of the biggest consumers of meat, especially from places like Brazil and the U.S.
I'm not even entirely sure McDonald's actually serves any real meat anyway, but I mean, this is at least a good alternative.
Yeah.
36,000 restaurants.
Okay, so thank you. So 36,000 restaurants, that's, potentially maybe one day. If nothing else, maybe the plant-based burger becomes the clear-cut, more affordable, cheaper, tastes the same, better nutrition-wise one day. It just becomes the better use case, and maybe that becomes the default, and then like your real, all real 100% beef becomes like the delicacy, the the substitute, the kind of the upsell, and everyone else gets a much more healthy, affordable, plant-based burger meat. Maybe one day that becomes the way. Anyways, step number one. Anywho, McDonald's made waves this morning when it announced its new McPlant, and they said that it's a new plant-based patty and chicken substitute formulation was made in-house because Beyond Meat caused Beyond Meat shares to slide. However, McDonald's overstated its own role in the creation of its McPlant, which was actually developed in conjunction with Beyond Meat. So with that being said, the partnership seems like a win-win for the alternative protein provider, which is locked in a as the author put it, in a meaty competition with its privately held rival Impossible Foods. They said, however, there's still more news from Beyond Meat that's coming later today as the company announces its latest earnings, and which we just said, they really do focus on the economics of it all. But we actually have this better article here that just came out today as well. Anywho, the company's special formulation could extend across plant-based products, including burgers, chicken substitutes, and breakfast sandwiches, according to Borden. So I think what they're saying there is that it's not just a beef substitute, but the formulation with a little bit of changing could also work for chicken and sausage, I'm assuming, so across their entire lineup. Yeah, so it's crafted exclusively for McDonald's, by McDonald's, and they said that, let's see, so diners on the Golden Arch can find a vegetarian sandwich option. Let's see, so compared to some of the other fast food chains, McDonald's has been something of a laggard. Burger King, of course, has the Impossible Whopper, the Impossible Whopper, and Beyond Meat has partnered with KFC on a plant-based nugget. So there you go. I'm cautiously optimistic. I definitely will try it. Once in a while I will have McDonald's, and so far everywhere I've tried like the Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat, I've been very impressed with how it tastes. Again, nutrition wise, I wish it was a little bit better, but they're definitely doing a good thing here, and I'm hoping to see this catch on. Again, I am fully supportive of a day when plant-based meat in fast food especially is kind of the
norm.
Yeah, the norm, and then the beef is the upsell. The beef is kind of the add-on, because beef takes such a huge role when it comes to climate change. It's something definitely worth tackling.
It absolutely does. And there's another thing too. Like personally, if I could, I would eat this stuff exclusively. I do like the idea of not having to kill and eat animals to get my food. But also, there's been a lot of talk about, bringing the coronavirus into the conversation where, what was it, minks? The minks, the little weasels that you make your fur coats out of, have started getting infected. And we already know that dogs and cats and other things can get it. And now there's talk about chickens getting it. What if cows get it? So this is also going to kind of cut down potentially on if this thing does stick around like the flu and it shows up every year and it gets into your animals and people get it from eating meat. This will be a good opportunity to kind of avoid that too, I think.
And I wasn't going to bring up the sad story of the minks. So sad that a lot of those minks had to be destroyed. But so mink farms all over in a Nordic country. I can't recall. It was like Sweden or Norway or something like that. All of them had to be put down because they had their own strain of coronavirus, a mutation of coronavirus. And it wasn't even like, oh no, all the minks are sneezing. It's more like, oh no, the minks are sneezing and it may make us sneeze a little bit differently. And then suddenly you have two different strains of coronavirus going around. So in the entire country, they had to put down the entire stock of minks. So
that's so sad.
Yeah, but I don't think the world could handle a second strain of coronavirus that is just as destructive as the first one. So
Yeah, not if it's already mutating in humans. Like, we've already got enough mutations.
Yeah. No more mutants. You heard it first here from Carissa. But I will say that, it's something that I hadn't even considered. It's much harder to, not hard. Well, crops can be devastated by a lot of different events. But destroying, one large planting of a certain crop, in this case would be like soybeans, destroying a bunch of soybeans is a lot different than destroying a bunch of chickens or a bunch of cows, because again, it takes so much more, and hey, they are living creatures. And Carissa, I'm honestly with you on this one. I wish what I ate never existed, never felt pain, never had to endure the conditions it had to live in before it got to my dinner plate. But I also feel like, ribs are tasty, and that's just kind of the way of it. So,
That's bad truth.
I'm a guilt-ridden meat eater, but maybe one day I don't have to be guilty about what I eat. So, anywho, there's that. A plant-based McPlant vegetarian option coming to McDonald's here shortly.
I'll probably try it.
I will too. And hey, if they keep the cost down, like if it's absolutely free and it tastes pretty good, like it doesn't even have to be the exact same. If it tastes good, I will probably get it every single time. Like, just flat, because hey, that's just the way it is. So, okay, let's see. There's that one. Let's go ahead and continue on here. And I have a ton of stories that we can pick from. I should probably mention this one. Speaking of financials, you may have noticed Zoom stock went down like 20% today. And if you're wondering why did that happen? Well, check this one out. Zoom lied to its users about end-to-end encryption for years. Yeah.
Oh, we knew that already, didn't we?
We did not. This is actually a new one. So since 2016, Zoom said that they had end-to-end encryption. And for those of you who don't know what end-to-end means, it means that, let's say I'm on a call with Carissa. Her application of Zoom has a public key and a private key. Mine has a public key and a private key. When we connect on Zoom, end-to-end encryption means that her device has the ability to decrypt the conversation that we're having, and my device has the ability to decrypt the conversation that we're having. The data that's being sent back and forth. And if at any point between those two, even if Zoom, the FBI, the CIA, the Chinese government, whatever, if they pick it up from a server in between that we're connecting over the internet with, they're going to get a completely encrypted communication that they don't have the keys to, because again, the keys are on our separate devices. Turns out that's not true, because Zoom for the past 4 years has been claiming that they have end-to-end encryption, but in fact, Zoom itself has been they maintained the cryptographic keys that could allow Zoom to access the content of its customers' meetings and secured its meetings in part with a lower level of encryption than promised. So it was not end-to-end, because end-to-end does not have a third point. It's not end-to-end to end. And that third point was the Zoom communication software, or at least the corporation itself could hand over the decryption keys to anyone that they felt like. And obviously with Zoom being a Chinese-based company, you can guess why they had that option in there for the past 4 years.
Right. And we say that while on our Zoom call.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel a little bit less guilty because we want people to listen. And if that's your friendly neighborhood Chinese government, then hey, it is what it is.
Hey, they're still tuning in. A listener's a listener.
There you go. Now, with that being said, Zoom misled users by touting end-to-end 256-bit encryption to secure users' communication, when in fact it provided a lower level of security, which, scanning the article here, in my head, when they say a lower level, that means they're probably using like either 56 or 128 level, or 54 or 128, whatever. 64. There we go. Anyways, still not the worst thing, but at the same time, it just means that your Zoom communications were not as secure as they have claimed they were for the past 3 or 4 years. They said that the FTC announcement said that Zoom also misled some users who wanted to store recorded meetings on the company's cloud storage by falsely claiming that those meetings were encrypted immediately after the meeting ended. Instead, some recordings allegedly were stored unencrypted for up to 60 days on Zoom servers before transferred to its secure cloud storage. To settle the allegations, Zoom has agreed to a requirement to establish and implement a comprehensive security program, a prohibition on privacy and security misrepresentation, and other detailed and specific relief to protect its user base, which has skyrocketed. And this is the really surprising part because, again, we talk about Zoom. They were like the big winners when it came to coronavirus and all these meetings having to be held from home. They went from 10 million users in December 2019 to 300 million users in April 2020.
Oh, God.
Was that 4 months? 3 or 4 months? They went from 10 to 300 million. That's a huge growth. And by the way, the 300 million was the number of daily participants in Zoom meetings. So admittedly, some people might have like multiple meetings and things like that, but still, that's a lot of calls and a lot of stuff. It honestly feels like Zoom was one of those companies that was kind of flying under the radar and, you know, wasn't really doing everything that they promised, but it's okay because they had 10 million users compared to, you know, Cisco, WebEx or Skype or, you know, any of these other huge players before this. But then suddenly they became like the go-to, and everyone took a nice big magnifying glass and said, oh wait, turns out you're not doing everything that you say that you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah,
not that, I mean, yeah, there's, you know, people potentially looking at your stuff, but like, let's say you're probably, you know, doing your schoolwork, you're probably having, you know, just meetings with your boss, which may or may not be confidential. So like, I'm just kind of wondering how much that really matters, because like how
if you're
much
looking
private
for
stuff is going on Zoom, you know, because you're already on the internet. Like if you're on the internet, there's a risk of your stuff being seen, regardless of how secure it is, because it's the internet.
So the, you know, for you and me, for school students, for church organizations, for the everyday uses that we all have for Zoom, odds are no one really wants to see, you know, you talking with with grandma, talking with her grandkids, that kind of thing. No one really cares. The bigger part is when, let's say, NVIDIA decides to have a pre-shareholder meeting and they're exchanging confidential information that's under NDA, and they have a 100-person internal conversation about, you know, kind of the revenue and everything that they're doing and, you know, what they're planning. Or if in the healthcare industry they're talking about their you know, this upcoming event that's going to affect this side or the other, you know, either financial or legal binding stuff. That matters a lot to a lot of companies. And Zoom, again, became kind of the go-to, you know, being able to host like, what was it, like 1,000 people, I think, at one point, or like 300 people. Mm-hmm. Zoom became the go-to for a lot of organizations. The everyday users probably don't have too much to really worry about, but the larger companies, especially when you say that, hey, meetings were held for 60 days unencrypted, even though they were totally supposed to be encrypted, who knows who could have gotten their hands on that? You know, you trust that you're using software that is doing what it says, like it's totally encrypted, it's good to go. You know, you can legally use this because they're taking these precautions, and then they don't do it. It's like using, let's say, a file sharing service, Carissa, that says we're HIPAA compliant. You can use us. We're good to go. And then suddenly you find out, oh, turns out they just stuck the sticker on there, but they're not actually HIPAA compliant whatsoever. People can get in trouble for that. And according to the FTC, Zoom is indeed getting in trouble for this.
All right.
Yeah, the really, when it comes down to it, this doesn't do much for the end user, but for large corporation, like for large corporate entities, it might affect if they continue their corporate account with Zoom. You know, when these companies pay Zoom $10 million to be their choice of, you know, kind of virtual conference meeting solutions, yeah, those contracts might go elsewhere because of this. So it's, yeah. it is what it is. Also, don't lie. It's not that hard. Don't do that. Now, okay, so there's that story. Chris, I don't know if you had a chance to kind of look through the articles where we have plenty to talk about, but I was wondering if you had any that kind of caught your eye. But I'm going to do one more, and then we'll do whichever one you pick. Okay. This one should be quick that I'm about to pick, and it's about Netflix. And this one from The Verge. Launching in France. So to all of our French listeners, oui, I think is the way you say that. But I continue on and just say that Netflix is testing a linear channel in France that should help with decision fatigue. And this is for anyone out there who turns on any of these services, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, and they go, wow, look at all these options. I'm tired. I spent all day working. I don't want to think. I just want to watch. And you either go to like your most recent or, you just throw on whatever. Well, this is something to help alleviate that. And so this is according to Variety. The channel called Netflix Direct will be available to Netflix streaming subscribers and will provide content from its existing streaming library in a linear format, much like cable and broadcast television stations do. So if you think about traditional cable television, you turn on channel 16, it's Nickelodeon, there's Rugrats playing, you're good to go. You sit there, you watch it, you tune in whenever you want. It's linear. That's the way, if you come in halfway through, that's it. You are watching half the episode. I'm
so
assuming,
it's just like TV, except on the internet.
Exactly, except embedded within Netflix, and they say that they're doing this because, quote, maybe you're not in the mood to decide, or you're new and finding your way around, or you just want to be surprised by something new and different. Netflix said in a statement announced about the new service, it chose France for the launch of Netflix Direct because traditional TV is hugely popular there, and people just want to lean back, experience where they don't have to choose shows. Netflix Direct's rolled out in some places on November 5th in France and will expand to more parts in the country. Netflix has about 9 million subscribers in France, so lots of people are definitely in for a treat. Netflix has tested other alternative to a standard streaming offering, where obviously in August they launched a shuffle button to allow users to randomly scroll through recommended viewing options. With Netflix Direct, all viewers on the channel will be watching the same programming at the same time. So, like I said, even though it's still streaming and anything that they play, you can go into Netflix's library and start at the very beginning, episode 1, whatever. If they're playing, let's say, Avatar season 2, episode 7, 13 minutes in, you tune into to Netflix Direct, you're watching the exact same thing at the exact same time as everyone else. That is what it is. The streaming giants saw. Yeah.
Sorry. I was wondering.
Real quick, Rissa, last one, and then that, because there's like one more sentence. The streaming giants saw a sharp increase in its business. Over the first 2 quarters, it added 26 million subscribers, which is about as much as it added in the entirety of 2019. So Netflix is huge, and yeah, that was the last point. So go ahead.
Nice. I was wondering if the streaming is only within certain regions, or like, let's say if you're watching something in France, if you switch on the same thing, let's say they're doing it in China in a different time zone, a different part of the planet, is it going to be the same show, or is it going to be different based on the locations?
So obviously, So obviously, right now, because it's only in France, it can only be the same thing. When they spread it to different regions, which is what I assume you meant, when they send it to different regions, it will undoubtedly be different content, because anyone out there who knows this, if you have Netflix in Europe, it does not have the same content in America. And if you're in America, you don't have the same Netflix as you do in Canada. Netflix, unfortunately, has to deal with a lot of kind of the rights to content. And, say, for instance, like The Office is leaving, has left. It's either leaving or has left Netflix at the beginning or the end of this year. And whereas Canada, they're still going to have it. So, they can still watch The Office for as long as they want. Friends is still a thing on American Netflix, but in other countries, not so much. Things like that, yeah, it's going to be region locked undoubtedly. I'm more wondering if there's going to be multiple channels within Netflix Direct, like if there's going to be like a kids station, a horror station, an action movie station. I'm wondering if there's going to be multiple versions of Netflix Direct. And I've been saying this forever. I wish I could make my own playlist. Like, I wish that I could set up my own channel and say, I want to watch this show, this show, this show, this show, and it would randomly play a random episode, a random show in a random order, and just let it go. I wish I could create my own Netflix channel, and this seems to be a step towards that, so I'm happy.
Excellent. Yeah, totally. And I mean, the reason I was asking that was because I was thinking, what if your friend on the other side of the world's like, oh man, turn on Netflix, you got to watch this thing. But if it's a different region, it might not work the same kind of deal.
So, like I said before, if nothing else, everything that they play on these should be available in the standard Netflix library. So
Right.
if they're super into whatever is currently on, they can stop watching Netflix Direct, go back to their library and turn on episode 1 and start from there. So if nothing else, they can do that. So traditional Netflix is not going away. It's just turning a little bit more into cable than it was before. So, okay, cool. Carissa, your turn.
All right, I want to do the Verge Hyperloop one.
Yeah, that's I completely forgot that Verge is also working on a Hyperloop as well as Tesla, but yeah, Verge Hyperloop. Real quick, Carissa, what do you know about it?
It's like a speed train.
Yeah, kinda. Of course, they have the bullet trains in Japan.
Right.
They're cool.
That's what I meant, bullet train.
Yeah. They're actually maglev trains, but still, they're super fast. I think that they just set like a new land speed record a couple of months ago. They go like 300 plus miles an hour, 350 or something like that. It's very impressive. And unfortunately, I even saw a picture the other day that one was just covered in blood splatters because sometimes when you're traveling at like 300 plus miles an hour and birds get in the way, train is heavier than bird, you can draw the rest. So, Oops. Yeah, well, this will save the bird population in one, kind of side effect of it all. I don't think anyone was really looking to do that, but Carissa, maglev has kind of gone as far as it can by not actually making physical contact with the rails of a magnetic levitating train. Your limitations become air resistance, how fast you go, the amount of air pushing back against you, and, you're starting to work against those kinds of physics. They're very fast, very efficient, good for them. They're very safe as well. Great. Now, what the Hyperloop is hoping to do is take out that last barrier and hopefully get even more improvement out of magnetic levitation, where if you put them into a tube, much like a subway or something like that, if you put them into a tube that is vacuum sealed, there's almost no air within the tube itself, then you have no air resistance. And these magnetic levitation trains, in some cases I've heard, can go up to 760 miles an hour.
Wow.
Let's see, I'm trying to think. Let's see, speed of a passenger plane. You're looking at about 550 to 575 miles an hour. So these things go about...
This is hitting Mach.
Yes. These things... no, actually, let's see. Speed of Mach 1. And actually, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's just under Mach 1, but Mach doesn't really come into it because, again, it is within a vacuum. So it's, right. You don't have any kind of air pressure, air resistance, that kind of thing to overcome. But yeah, so 760 miles an hour and you're good to go. So it's possible we haven't reached that yet because we're still testing the technology. And this is another good step to that. So on Sunday afternoon, they had a test in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first two passengers were Verge Hyperloop's chief technology officer and co-founder, Josh Geigel. If you were wondering if these people had confidence in their own system, This is it, because when you think about everything that can go wrong with a vacuum airless tube with a passenger train inside of it, yeah, a lot of things can go wrong, but luckily nothing did. They said that
That would have been tragic. Oh,
definitely.
no.
After strapping into their seats in the company's gleaming white and red Hyperloop pod, dubbed Pegasus, they were transferred into an airlock as the air inside the vacuum tube was removed. The pod then accelerated to a brisk 100 miles per hour down the length of the track before slowing down to a stop. They say it's an important achievement, which found in 2014 on the premise of making Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's vision of a futuristic transportation system of magnetically levitating pods traveling through near airless tubes at the speed of 760 miles an hour a reality. They have a dev loop test track, which is 500 meters long. So really, when you think about it, you're thinking, 100 miles isn't that fast. They only had about 500 meters to do that, which is not a lot of space. It's it's a very short track, but they're able to get up that fast. They've conducted over 400 tests, but never before with human passengers until today. So let's see. So they have, of course, the one that they used was a little bit scaled down. These things, they're hoping, become the size of a typical subway car and hold just about as many people. But I'm super excited for this one, Carissa, because imagine living in, let's say, and they have a couple different corridors that they've been talking about putting these things in, like DC to let's see, they've been talking about having one from like DC to like Philadelphia and places like that, DC to Baltimore, let's say Dallas to all places, Dallas to Denver, Colorado. And like that trip, which is very long, very boring, no one ever wants to do it, but imagine being able to do that trip in less than 2 hours. As opposed to a car ride of what could take 10 to 12 hours.
Or the cost of an airplane ride with your baggage being checked and all that stuff too. Like, this is going to be incredible.
It really opens up the possibility to, let's say you could live in Seattle and you could commute to, San Francisco. It would still be like an hour-long commute, but you could theoretically live 2 or 3 states away and still commute into work. It shrinks your world down when suddenly you are able to make these trips. They even had a proposed one that went from like Orlando to New York, and that trip would take something like I want to say that trip would take like just under 3 hours, but still, you could get on this train in the morning, spend the day in New York, and get back and still be there for like 8 hours. And as long as the tickets aren't that much, because these things should be, continuously going, constantly moving, carrying passengers from one place to another. I mean, man, you could just, like I said before, it shrinks your world down. This thing goes 50% faster than a passenger plane. It becomes a very reasonable way to, kind of send people. And of course, think about planes. There's all the jet fuel and of course the inherent cost of, just scheduling a plane, filling up the plane, that kind of thing. These are just individual pods that would be shipped down these tubes that are pre-built. It's like the invention of the train all over again. The train and the railroadway system of the United States was at one point the envy of the world, and this has the ability to do that because unfortunately America just has not really embraced magnetic levitation or bullet trains here in the United States with public transit, but maybe something like this would be more appealing because they would go easily twice as fast.
Yeah, and I mean that's just talking about here. That's not talking about going from, over the ocean. Let's say, these are, air-free tubes, right? So in theory, you could put them in the water and you could just fly through the ocean and get over to Europe, not even having to use a plane, and it would probably take roughly the same time, if not less time, depending on how fast it's going and how many people you can get on it and all that stuff. High conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and let's see. So America to Europe in miles, you're looking at about 4,200 miles. Which, if you're going about 800 miles an hour, that would take you about a little bit under 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
Now, obviously, building something like that over the ocean would be a tremendous skill in engineering, because where are you going to put kind of the pylons and stuff like that. But still, you'd be able to do the entire Europe to North America in about 5 or 6 hours. Very, very fast. It's yeah. So anyways, they did their first passenger test. It's definitely more of a oh, wow. Well, there you go. Everyone, there's music playing in the background, and let's see, that's actually... There we go. Much better. Okay, so everyone, there's music playing in the background. Carissa, we did not get to any of our stories that we had here. So we tried our best, everyone. If you want to find out more, computeramerica.com, you can definitely check that out, and you can find that at our website, computeramerica.com. Yeah, we'll have everything that we talked about today and more tomorrow on the show. Let's see, we have a couple of guests here on the show tomorrow. If everything goes according to plan, we should have a company called Lutron. We had them on a couple of months ago. We're here to talk again now about more home automation. If you're into that, you'd be good to go. And then Wednesday, Sandy Berger. Thursday, Mike Cermak. Friday, Ralph Bond. And more guests, more interviews. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Computer America.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.